fast forward a little bit to how you got started in the UFC, and how the contract, because I saw a little. I don't think it was on your channel, but I saw a video about you when you were talking about. Obviously, I think we're gonna get onto it, but like the life of a fighter not being glamorous. You were sleeping in mats in your gym or something.
Yeah, I slept in the gym
but then eventually, because your record was really impressive, you got signed by UFC in 2013, 14.
So it was I think it was at the end of 2013. I got signed, and then I fought in 2014. But yeah, it was just pure luck, really, that I got signed. You know, it was as a young fighter. I think I went 8-0. You know, and early on in my career, so everyone's like, wow, you know, 8-0, you know, up and coming. Obviously, the UFC is the goal.
Is it, just to interject, is it when you were doing these fights, the ones that got you noticed, is there a point at which you turned professional before UFC? So
in 2008, I turned professional. So I only had 10 amateur fights. I'd won 8, lost 2. This is just in MMA. So I'd won 8, lost 2. But there weren't many fights around at that point, you know.
Is that something you just sign up for and you say, look, I'll compete?
Yeah. So we'd just, you know, like I say, I'd have to go to some leisure centre in Gloucester, or I'd just go to, you know, there'd be, you know, small event, working men's club. There's a ring and you can have an MMA fight in it. That sort of deal. So I had 10 amateur fights, and then I decided, you know, I want to start fighting professionally. And I didn't really have a coach per se. I was doing a lot of this myself off my own back. I had people who trained, who I went to for training, but I didn't have like one guy who was like guiding me through, and this is what you're going to do. I just said one day I want to fight pro. And they were like, yeah, jump on. So, so I made my debut in 2008, and I had a good run. I won my first 8 fights. I won a 4-man tournament, so I had 2 fights in one night. That was really tough. That was like the most exhaustive I've ever been, but both fights went the distance as well. So out of all my wins, out of 20 professional wins, only 2, I finished every single fight inside the distance apart from 2. And those 2 fights were on the same day. So yeah, that were a long night. That were a long night. But I'm organising these fights myself. I'm training myself. I'm just going to these fights with my friends, basically. My friends are cornering me in fights. Like, I'm telling them between rounds what to tell, you know, they're saying, you should do this. And I'm like, tell me to do this instead. I'm cornering them. Who's cornering me? So it was a bit crazy. I could have done it a lot better. I could have, in hindsight, you know, gone to America or gone to a gym and said, right, train me. But it just didn't work out like that. And I'm sort of proud that I got so far just organising my own stuff. So.
And then how did the UFC thing come around? And was it like, you said in that video I saw you were like, I just got this offer one day when you were sleeping in the mats in your gym, so that must have felt good. Yeah,
so like I say, early on in my career, the UFC is a goal, you know. I'm 8-0, and then I took a few dangerous fights, which other people didn't want these fights. Like, who's going to fight this guy? He's unbeaten. And I'm like, I'll do it. Yeah. And they're like, oh, wow, you know.
Guess who he got an offer to fight that it never came to fruition? Khabib.
So, you dodged that.
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't.
That's it. I could have been the guy back then, but yeah, I saved that screenshot when I got offered Khabib. Yeah, so I think I ended up fighting on Bama. It conflicted with that fight when I did a flying triangle on Dino the Singer. Yeah. So I did that.
Would you have done it then?
Oh yeah, I would have fought him. Yeah, no problem. Back then, like, I was fighting anybody. So when I was 8-0. And I fought another guy, I think he was like 7-0 or 8-0 as well. And they were like, these 2 young lads, you know, who's going to be the next up and comer sort of thing. And I'm like, yeah, I'll fight him. I ended up losing that fight. And everyone's like, you know, it felt good for me because it was a tough fight. I enjoyed it. I lost, which is a downer, but it sort of took the pressure off me because I'm not unbeaten anymore. So people just sort of like, oh yeah, fuck Danny now. We'll look at this guy. And then I remember John Kavanagh, McGregor's coach, was on the Cage Warriors forum, which was like the big MMA forum back in the day, and he's like, you know, no one wants to fight Gunnar, who'll fight him? So I'm like, I'll do it.
I'll interject there. So you watched the UFC London recently. Gunnar Nelson, the Icelandic fighter who got on the dude's back for 3 rounds and just but just punching him. We got body triangle on. Did you see him?
Yeah.
That's the dude. So he's still going now. He's Gunner, isn't he?
Oh, no way.
So
that's who he fought. Yeah.
Yeah, so
He was a unit as well, that dude.
Yeah, so Gunners was unbeaten at the time. He's like this phenom, fighting out of Iceland. So yeah, so I ended up fighting him. I lost to him. And
How did you lose? Was it
he got on my back and he choked me.
Oh,
which is like his game. That's his game. He's getting on people's backs.
Gunner's posture, just quickly on Gunner, like you might have seen him come out with like a karate stance, but like he's got this weird posture. Like
he's like an ape.
Yeah, he's like an ape. His hips like stick out, his ass sticks out, and he's like upright.
Yeah.
And that must be where he generates all his power from as a
he's got
grappler.
very, very powerful hips. I once seen a photo of him. Someone posted just a random photo, like, guess which fighter this is? And I straight away said, it's Gunner. Him as like a baby. He's got a nappy on and he's got this arch in his back and this weird like posture with his upper body. So he looks like an ape. Like that kind of...
When you see a gorilla walking, that's what it looks like.
That's what it looks like. Pretty cool.
Sorry, mate, carry on.
Yeah. So I'm 8-2. I've lost 2 on trot, and then it sort of almost derails the UFC train. Then you've lost 2 fights. It's like yeah. So then I'm just fighting anyone, anywhere. I've got injuries popping up. I'm just having random fights in different places. I'm just doing whatever. I'm not thinking about the UFC anymore. I'm almost thinking that ship sailed now. It's just a case of let's travel the world and fight, and that's what I was doing. I'd fought in America before I'd fought in the UFC.
Yeah.
So I'd already been to America and fought. And then I fought in Sweden on short notice. I was actually preparing for a fight and the fight didn't happen for some reason. I can't remember why. And then, they messaged me from Sweden, which I'd already been to Sweden and beat one of their good guys before. So they're like, "Oh, we want you to come back. It's in a week. Can you do it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So the opponent was an ex-UFC fighter. So he just got cut from the UFC, and this was like his first fight back in his hometown in Sweden. This was in Gothenburg. So I'm like, yeah, sweet. So I rocked up there. I took Tom Crosby as my corner man. He's just my student. He's at the time he'd had 1 fight, and I'm like, you can corner me. And he's like, all right, yeah, sweet. So we get there. And we was in the changing room with Jens Pulver, who was like a legend in the UFC. I think he was a lightweight champion of the UFC, like the old lightweight title. So he's in our changing room. He's got his brother and his manager in there. So, we're talking and stuff and, having a laugh and a joke. And then, so he was main event, I was co-main. So we made a joke about wrapping hands because... I've got Tom with me. He didn't know how to wrap hands, and we've just got these bandages and that. And then Jens's brother Abel says, do you want me to wrap your hands for you? And I said, don't worry about it. I said I won't even punch him. I'll just go choke him, and then I'll be back. And then everybody laughed. And then I went out, fought him, choked him, and just came back. And they were like, "No way! You said you were going to do that."
That's class.
So it was just like a funny story. And I've told that a lot of times. It were really. It was just a surreal moment, just to go out there and do that. But again, I'm not thinking about anything else.
This was like on his home turf.
Yeah.
That must have been a buzz though.
A lot of my fights were like that. To be fair, like a lot of the fights, the big fights that I've had have been away. A lot of the big wins. So I'd done that, and then the plan in my head was to fight again on that show in Sweden. There was another guy, Bill Keeden he's called. He was like the champion at my weight, and I was like, let's have a super fight with him. He'd previously fought in the UFC, he'd fought in Japan. So I'm like, I want to fight that guy. We'll fight for a title, you know what I mean? So in my head, I'm thinking, this place in Sweden is my UFC. This is my end game. Like, I'll be the champion here. And, it was a big show, huge show. So that was the plan. But then when I got home, the manager that was in the same room, I didn't realise who he was. So a guy called Monty Cox. So he's the manager of like...
You like that name, do you?
Couldn't help it.
Monty Cox. Big Cox, they call him. So...
they don't call you that, do they?
They don't call me that.
So he's actually the manager of Robbie Lawler... all these Matt Hughes, who used to be welterweight champion, Jeremy Horn, all these guys from the Miletich camp. He was their manager, so he had loads of connections and stuff. And he just emailed me a UFC contract, like, congratulations, you're a UFC fighter. I was like, sick. So it was just through that fight in Sweden, through that, he's gone away, and he spoke to Joe Silver, the matchmaker at the time, and he's told Joe Silver this story. Oh, there's this crazy guy rocked up to Sweden, UFC veteran. He's just gone out, choked him, and he had his mate in his corner. So he's told this story, and he's like, yeah, let's get him on. There was a UK card in 3 months' time, so it was an easy sell for him. So
what do those contracts? I don't obviously can't tell me like the finite. I don't really get the fine print of them, but like, does it contract you for a certain period of time or a number of fights? Or?
It's for 4 fights, but everything in those contracts for the fighters, and this is why there's a lot of stuff around, the fairness and stuff like for fighters is everything in that contract is to benefit the promotion. It's not for you, so they can terminate whenever they want.
Yeah.
So you sign for 4 fights, but they can you whenever they want, and everything in there is just for their benefit. It's like, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. So I remember posting on Twitter, and they messaged me say, take that down, put this instead. It was very it was like that. I don't know if it's like that still now, or
can you remember what the value of it was back? So 2014. Can you remember what the pay was?
Yeah, it was 10 and 10.
10 and 10. So $10,000 to show up, $10,000 for a win.
Yeah, and it's similar now.
Well, you were telling me before.
Yeah, so Paddy Pimblett, who's like everyone's talking about now, he revealed that he's on a 12 and 12 contract.
Yeah,
which is
Yeah, so his first fight. So what it was with me, it's 10 and 10, and then it goes up 12 and 12, 14 and 14, and it goes up like that if you win. So I had 2 fights, I lost 2 decisions, so I got 10 for my first, 10 for my second, done, and they can just cut you. I thought I'd done enough to sort of stay in there.
Yeah.
Even my manager messaged me, he's like, listen, you've had 2 close fights, they've been entertaining. Like, my dad had died in the middle of my fight camp, so they were like, bearing all that in mind, they ain't gonna cut you. And then they invited me to Sweden to watch the UFC. They're like, free tickets if you want them, come and sit cage side. I'm like, sweet. I got to Sweden, and while I was there, I got an email saying termination of contract. I was like, nice one.
Talk about fucking kicking a man while he's down.
Yeah. So
that's a wild story, that.
Yeah, so I mean, the UFC, when the UFC came, like, the timing of it was probably the worst timing. I mean, for the first fight, like, I felt pretty good or whatever. My dad came and watched me fight, but he was really ill. He was like, I think that the fight was in March, and he died in May, I think. So it was, that was obviously the last fight he got to see. He got to see me fight in the UFC. I didn't get the win, but I had a good fight. It was a close fight, and then then he died. Then I was already scheduled to fight in might have been the June time in Vegas. So I had to pull out of that fight. I've got a funeral, I've got all this stuff to sort, and it's like, my dad's just died. It's sort of, my mum's there on her own. I can't be what I needed to do is leave to train.
Yeah.
Take myself away and train somewhere, train at a gym. I just couldn't do that. So then I did. When I fought the second time for the UFC, that was in Macau in China, which is a bit of a mad place. So I fought there, but I'd just not taken myself away and concentrated on myself for training. I basically just trained with my mates, did a few sessions, and just got in there, and I just weren't fully prepared and ready to fight. That's in hindsight what I should have done. He said, no, listen, give me a few months to get everything in order, get myself into a routine, maybe even go somewhere like go to Greg Jackson's camp or something like that, where I'm just going to be a fighter and not a coach.
Yeah.
Where someone else is going to coach me and tell me what to do. Maybe I should have done that, but I just tried to blag it and do my own thing, and it didn't quite work out. So yeah.
Do you sort of regret not sort of pausing it a little bit after everything that had gone on? Did you feel under pressure from the UFC to make these fights?
Yeah.
That's what
I thought if I don't, so they emailed. I cancelled that first fight, and then they emailed me, said, right, in 3 months' time or whatever, there's this fight, and I sort of thought they've sent this offer. I can't really decline it now. How many times can I do that? I didn't want to piss them off, so I thought, yeah, I'll just do it. I'll be all right. And I was all right. I wasn't when my dad died, I didn't really have any. I weren't like distraught where it like just ruined my life and I didn't leave my house. My life continued as normal, but it just weren't the ideal scenario, if you know what I mean. It just weren't. It just weren't the. Like a lot of it were down to like my family. I didn't want to leave. I didn't just want to fuck off and leave my family, and you know, I had to just get through it, just do my own thing. I just did my own training, again, with my own students. I'm just turning up, we're just doing bits of training. I'm like, right, Josh, you hold these pads for me, you know. And I had people help me. I had Craig Burke and Cam Atakuru. They helped me. You know, I did some sessions with them. They cornered me and everything. And I'm really grateful for like the help that they gave me for those 2 fights and, you know, coming with me to China and stuff like that. But I mean, I don't regret any of it. I chose to do what I did, and that's it.
So you got cut from the UFC. Is that when you went to Bellator? Is that when you got signed for Bellator?
So I never got signed to Bellator. I just did a 1 fight. It was just a 1 fight deal. It's like, do you want to fight in Bellator? They're in the UK. I'm like, yeah, fuck it. And then I just happened to twist to the guy. And then Bellator just never really promoted it after that. It just sort of like went. And it's only recently I've featured on some of their highlight reels where they're like, oh, sickest finishes in Bellator history, and I've been on there. But after it happened, it sort of got overshadowed because that's the same event where MVP kneed Cyborg in the head, and he had his head caved in, and there was all these...
Cyborg? That is actually a character from Mortal Kombat, isn't it? Is that a guy's nickname or something?
Yeah. Evangelista Santos is called. So his head caved in from a knee. So the next day, nobody gave a fuck about this twister. All they were doing was sharing x-rays of this guy's head just caved in. Like,
Was he all right?
Is he alive? He's all right, apparently, yeah.
His brain's just fucking scrambled egg. Yeah. But apart from that, he's all right.
Yeah, so...